Welcome to our Capricorn Farms DVD. And we're not movie makers, but thanks for ordering our catalog. And the people who buy our goats are usually located a long ways away. They would prefer to actually see the goats than to read the appraisal numbers and the DHI numbers. The first doe we have for you is Yashoda. She's got that high, tight mammary that the show people just love. We're not actually breeding for that. Her mother made 5,000 pounds in 305 days. Yashoda's a little immature here. She was a late kid, so she's not like a full-grown 2-year-old. She's going to be a whole lot more powerful when she gets another 6 months or so on her. And both her buck and doe are available at the moment. The way I really prefer to buy goats myself is to make an advance deposit and have a contract that says I get the kid no matter how good it is when it's born, and you can do the same thing with this doe. Then here we go with You Be the Judge. This doe only has a yearling lactation. She's for a dairyman that really wants a lot of milk. I would not recommend a Prince daughter for a show herd, but Prince is way up there on the USDA sire summary, and her dam Vindication had PTAFS that was out of sight. So I think when this doe turns in her second and third lactation, she's really gonna scorch them. The fat percent is not good for a dairy that's getting paid by components, but the milk is awesome for a dairy that gets paid by straight milk. Spice Girl, and her dam is the best through milker we've ever had in our little 35 or 40 years. The doe milked all the way through last winter, extract, and then came up to do 15 pounds and 15.5 pounds on her April and May test. You know, they go down in the winter and come up in the summer. The sire is Moose. He makes huge animals, even to the second generation, and he also makes huge ears. And there are one or two show people that like the daughters they have from Moose, but basically I would never recommend him for a herd that wants to show. But for a dairy, he's fabulous because his daughters can come online as early as 9 months. That means they're getting pregnant at 4 months. That means you're not spending the $3 a day to carry them for a year and a half. Moose was a true genetic freak. His mother was large, but not a giant. His father was large, but not a giant. And by the time Moose was 1 year old, he was larger than any of our mature bucks, including his dad. And there's no real explanation for it, other than every once in a while you get a mutation. An extraordinarily interesting thing is that the American Dairy Goat Association scoring system doesn't give any advantage to size. When the appraiser is here and he talks about body capacity, he keeps saying shape, not size. And in the final lineups, you can see an itty-bitty La Mancha going best in show over a giant Saanans. But in fact, size does matter. That is the reason that 99% of the milk in this country comes from cows, because it costs the same amount of money to move a big goat through your milk parlor as it costs to move an itty-bitty goat through your milk parlor. Here's Wayera. She by Majestic Prince, who follows the same profile as Moose, even though they're totally unrelated. Majestic Prince was lucky as hell to get an 87 in appraisal. Like Moose, he's an ugly guy that made a tremendous amount of milk. You don't have to listen to goat salesmen tell you who made a tremendous amount of milk. All you have to do is go to the American Dairy Goat Association website and click on production testing and find the sire summary that's produced by the United States Department of Agriculture using a Cray supercomputer, and it doesn't care whether your owner was a judge or a ADGA director. And both Moose and Majestic Prince are sitting right there on the USDA sire summary. Here's Yestitution. She's not quite 2 years old at the time we're making the tape, so she's a little immature. Her dam is a fabulous doe. Her dam's got a 90 and a 305 record that's within 15 pounds of 4,000. And the fabulous thing about her dam is that the teats point in a little. All the Saanans have teats pointing out as a whole, and it's very annoying to a hand milker because you have to stick your hand in the medial suspensory ligament and pull the mammary up in order to get the last squirts out of both sides, which is important to prevent mastitis. The dam also has a rockin' 3.6% for butterfat and 3.2% for protein, and 3.2% is about as high as protein ever goes in Saanans unless the lab makes a mistake, and the dairymen that we breed for get paid twice as much for protein as they do for butterfat. So we got terrific hopes for Yestitution and when she grows up. Unfortunately, her sire was a showbuck that we used for cleanup, so we don't know how bad that's going to mess up the many, many generations of terrific milkers here. Next doe we have for you is Wairika. Wairika comes from the Kathmandu family, and they all have names of exotic places. We weren't really trying for a show doe here, but we got one. She just pulled a 90 at her appraisal. The dam, Venice, is an extraordinary animal. Venice stood in 10th place in the milking yearling class at the Nationals. That's not what we're breeding for. She was number one in the entire Saanen breed on the Saanen top 10. Venice only has 4 mature female offspring, and every single one of them appraised 90. Venice's bucks and does are usually reserved way before they're born, so if you're interested in that, you ought to make your move. The sire, Vern, lives way up in Pennsylvania now, but we thought so much of him, we used him on Stargate, our super doe, as well as Venice, as well as 2 or 3 of the other extreme all-stars. So we'll see what Wairika can do in the way of milk, because we're not breeding for 90s. They just help kick the price up. She's been out twice as our 2-year-old entry. Actually, 2 shows, but 4 rings, and nobody's beat her in the 2-year-olds yet, although the competition in those 4 rings hasn't been anything to speak of.